Sure. This morning, first thing, I sent over a letter that was signed to the Privacy Commission, asking them to investigate the shredding that's been going on with the government and the actions they've been taking over the last several weeks in relation to shredding all the paperwork.
Do you have any specific concerns about this? Or?
Well, I have several specific concerns, primarily that there have been no instructions given to the people shredding. So there's just been a blanket statement saying shred this, and that means everything. And obviously some things are appropriate to shred and some things aren't. The paperwork itself belongs to the people of Alberta, and some of that paperwork should be kept for future reference, and obviously because of the nature of the paperwork itself and what it tells us. But you just don't give somebody instructions and say shred everything, or don't give them instructions at all and just say shred, because obviously they will be shredding everything, and there's some paperwork that is protected.
How do you know that's the directive that's been given?
We've heard from several organizations and several people that that's the instructions they've received, and that's why we've asked for the investigation.
Sorry, Brian, the Premier's office just got off the phone with them that they say they're going to put out a release. The Premier has directed and the Deputy Ministers have agreed to stop all shredding across government until they can sort of get to the bottom of what's going on.
Well, it might be too late to close the corral after the horses have already left the barn. I certainly think on the basis of this, it clearly indicates that the PC party and the ministers involved and the deputy ministers have a lot to answer for. And I think the people of Alberta deserve an answer on why they would give those instructions to people without clarifying what they should or shouldn't shred. We've had this issue for some time. This is not new to the Wild Rose Party. In fact, at the very beginning of the election, we received legal advice that indicated to us that we could not have the probable grounds to ask for an injunction by a judge, and in fact waited until most recently to write the Privacy Commissioner for this very reason. But we did investigate it, and we're told we didn't have a legal ground to stand on, but we think that obviously there should be steps taken so that this type of thing does not happen again.
How likely do you think there actually has been improper shredding?
Well, I can't speculate on that, but I would suggest on the basis of everything being shredded, you can judge for yourself on what has or has not been shredded, and since there hasn't been any clarification as to what shouldn't be shredded, it indicates to me that there has been a lot of improper shredding.
I'm sorry, you mentioned that you heard that was the directive given to government departments. Can you tell us the manner in which you heard that? From in-person correspondence?
Heard from individuals, but let's be clear. We don't have piles of paperwork not being shredded, which indicates that everything is being shredded. So where the shredding has taken place, there's not anything that's been not shredded, which indicates that everything is being shredded as well. So it's not just the evidence from individuals, but it's also evidence that nothing has been saved from those departments, which is very troubling indeed.
What do you want to see as part of this investigation?
Well, I'd like to see, first of all, as always, that there is a cleanup of government, and it starts right now. We've got a new government in place and a new premier, and I think what we have to see is new legislation that comes forward to stop this from ever happening again, and make sure that those people that are responsible for this kind of instruction or lack of specific instructions are held accountable, so that people know that when they do break the law or when they do things that are inappropriate, that they are held to account for that, so they won't do it in the future.
Do you think there's some sort of nefarious action going on here? Do you honestly believe that they haven't lost government in 44 years? They just didn't know.
I think it's very clear. We've seen this behavior before. We saw it the last time the Wild Roses almost formed government, and I don't think it would come as any surprise to anyone, especially normal Albertans, that what is being done is not appropriate and is beyond not only their authority but their moral obligation to make sure that this type of paperwork does not get shredded and does not disappear. Albertans need to know what has happened over the last 44 years, and this type of behavior is not appropriate for any government, especially a government that's leaving and needs to worry about its own credibility going forward.
Should the incoming NDP administration, should they have taken steps earlier to stop the shredding, before it came to this point?
No question whatsoever. I mean, here we are already a week into a new government and no steps were taken. I think it's inappropriate for them not to have stepped forward before now.
And how do you know all documents have been shredded?
Well, we don't know that all have. In fact, we've just heard that the Premier's office has indicated that they'll stop immediately, but what we do know is there's bags and bags of shredded material and no material that's been saved out of those offices.
But how do you know no material has been saved? Have you actually seen it?
Well, I have seen some of the bags, as I'm sure you have if you've gone to any of the departments, and we've seen bags and bags all over the place. But my understanding is that none have been saved.
Well, how's this done at the federal level? Because you've gone through this at the federal level. Is this sort of how it works then, or is there more of an honor system here in terms of document shredding?
No, some on the federal level and on the provincial level. So some of the documents, some of the files belong to the individual MLAs, but this is paperwork that belongs to the government of Alberta, which means it belongs to the people of Alberta, and that paperwork should not be shredded without the people's approval. And in this particular case, it's being shredded. I would suggest to keep secret some of the things that have happened in the past, and so that blame is not assessed to the appropriate PC minister or PC person. And I think it's inappropriate, and that's why we need to make sure legislation is in place to guard this from the future ever happening again, but also to make sure that those people that were responsible for this are held to account.
Last question.
This morning we heard there is a resource issue in terms of the departments investigating this. It's pretty tough to prove, and considering in terms of the evidence, if it's already been shredded. So
I disagree on that, if I can. I argue with the premise of your question. You say it's hard to prove. Well, I don't think it's hard to prove that the people did not receive instructions to not shred things. I think it's not hard to prove that nothing was not shredded. Those things are evidence that would obviously carry a lot of weight, and nobody is fooled by this. It's just the question of whether or not we've saved it in time to actually hold some people to account for what they've done and their inappropriate actions for the people of Alberta.